There's a reason you keep repeating the same patterns, waking up in the same version of your life even after trying all the affirmations, meditations, and mindset hacks. And here's the truth. It's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because you're being someone you were never meant to stay. Let me show you how this trap was built. Picture this. Every morning you wake up inside a hologram, not a sci-fi simulation, but a mental projection crafted by a version of you that stopped evolving long ago. That hologram has a name. It's called your identity, and it's running the show. But here's the paradox. You don't see the hologram. You see through it. You think you're observing the world objectively, but the truth is you're only witnessing collapsed possibilities filtered through the lens of your old self. The self that's addicted to survival. The self that memorized pain as personality. The self that says, this is just how life is. This is who I am. This is my reality. But what if I told you none of that is real? Let's interrupt the pattern here. Because if your brain just said, wait, so am I not who I think I am? Exactly. And that's the crack where the light gets in. You were never meant to live the same day 30,000 times and call it a life. But that's what the unconscious mind does. It loops the familiar. Not because it's good, but because it's known. And the known equals safety to a brain evolved for threat detection, not expansion. So here's the dark truth. Your nervous system doesn't care if your reality is painful. It only cares that it's predictable. This is why transformation feels scary, not because you're broken, but because the old you knows it's dying and it's fighting for its life. So how does this connect to the quantum leap? We've been sold the idea that a quantum leap is a giant external shift. A new job, a new relationship, a financial miracle. But that's not how reality works. At the quantum level, what appears as a leap is actually a collapse. A collapse of all other versions of you that aren't in resonance with your chosen frequency. Let me say it differently. The quantum leap doesn't happen outside you. It happens when you destroy the timeline where you keep playing small. Here's the missing puzzle piece. You're not failing because you lack clarity. You're stuck because your identity is entangled with your past emotionally, biologically, energetically. This isn't just poetic. It's physics. Let's go deeper. The identity you think is you. Your habits, your beliefs, your personality is nothing more than a vibrational echo. A frequency looped so many times it became solid. But solidity is an illusion. In quantum physics, even the most solid object is 9999.999% empty space vibrating energy. So what does that make your identity? A vibrational construct, and like any construct, it can be deconstructed. But that doesn't happen by thinking positive. It happens by pulling the plug on the version of you that keeps trying to survive a reality you're no longer meant to live in. Still with me? Good, because here's where it gets strange and powerful. You are not the version of you that wakes up in dread. You are not the one addicted to overthinking. You are not the echo of old trauma pretending to be personality. You are consciousness choosing a frequency. And here's what no one told you. The universe is not responding to your desires. It's responding to your vibrational identity. This means you don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. So when you say you want a quantum leap into a new life, but you keep waking up in the emotional state of your old self, you're not leaping. You're looping. Let's break that loop starting now. This is the part most people never tell you. Before you step into the next level of your reality, you must let the old you collapse. And collapse is messy. It feels like confusion. It feels like loss. It feels like death because energetically it is. You're not becoming your higher self. You're burying the version of you that was never meant to stay. So, let me leave you with this. The quantum leap doesn't begin with a goal. It begins with a funeral. The funeral of the version of you that's afraid of its own power. But what happens after that? That's where the real story begins. And in the next chapter, you'll discover something that rewrites everything you've been taught about reality and the shocking quantum secret that puts the power back in your hands. But not just yet. First, let this truth settle in yourselves. The life you're living now was designed by a version of you who no longer exists. Everything you've been told about reality starts with a single assumption, that you live in a solid world made of objects, atoms, and particles that exist independently of your awareness. But this right here is the lie that split science from spirit and left you walking through life believing you are separate from what you're trying to create. Because once you dive into the core of quantum mechanics, you'll see something so paradigm-shattering. It's almost unbelievable. The building blocks of reality don't behave like matter. They behave like mystery. And that mystery obeys your attention. For over a century, physicists have been trying to make sense of something they call wave-particle duality. In the famous double-slit experiment, A single electron behaves like a wave, a probability, a cloud of potential until someone observes it. Then and only then it collapses into a particle, a point, a position, a thing. This means the very act of looking determines what's real. The observer doesn't just watch reality unfold. The observer collapses reality into form. Let that sink in, because this isn't new age fluff. It's physics. But the implications go far beyond labs and equations. If a particle becomes real only when observed, what else in your life is waiting for you to look at it with new eyes? What possibilities are floating around you, still uncollapsed? Because the version of you looking at the world is trapped in yesterday's perception. And here's the part they never taught you in school. The observer is not separate from the field. You don't just see reality, you entangle with it, which means that your perception, your expectation, and your emotional state are not neutral. They are active forces in the quantum field, shaping what emerges into form. This changes everything. You're not a spectator in the theater of your life. You are the projector. This is why you can visualize a goal over and over, speak affirmations into the mirror, script your dream reality on fancy paper, and still nothing changes. Because if the you doing all that is still the old observer, still the same identity fused with fear, control, lack, or disbelief, then you're observing from the frequency of the past. And as quantum physics teaches us what you observe, you collapse. Let's go deeper. In the quantum field, there is no fixed reality, only probabilities. That means your future is not a straight line. It's a spectrum of infinite versions of you. The rich you, the healed you, the powerful you, the free you, all vibrating as waves of possibility in the field. And the version that becomes your experience depends entirely on which frequency you choose to become coherent with. This isn't about hoping or wishing or even doing. This is about tuning in. Think of it like this. Every version of you exists like a radio station. When you're tuned to the frequency of 88 GFM, you can't hear what's playing on a 105.9. Not because it's not there, but because you're not resonating with it. The signal exists, but it's not accessible to you yet. Now imagine your identity is the tuner. If you keep tuning into the version of you that says, I can't, it's hard, I've always struggled, then guess what frequency you're locked into? That version becomes your loop. But if you shift your tuning not by force but by coherence, then the field begins to reflect a whole new station of reality. So how do you shift your tuner? This is where it gets mystical and practical. The tuner is not in your thoughts. It's in your state of being. Your thoughts are electric. Your emotions are magnetic. Together they generate the electromagnetic signature you send out to the field. And the field, as confirmed by scientists like Dr. Joe Dispenza and Nassim Haramein, is responsive. It mirrors the frequency of your most dominant signal. Not what you want, not what you say, but who you are emotionally and vibrationally. And here's where the trap gets exposed. Most people try to change their life from the level of thought they think. If I just believe harder, affirm more, think positive. But their body is still memorized to fear, still addicted to survival chemistry, still emotionally conditioned to scarcity. So while the mind is dreaming of a better future, the body is broadcasting the vibration of the past. This creates incoherence, and incoherence keeps the quantum field in a state of confusion, sending you mixed results, fragmented manifestations, and repeated delays. You might be thinking, but I feel like I believe. I want this so badly. Why isn't it working? And the answer is brutally simple. Desire is not the key, identity is. You don't manifest what you desire. You manifest what your nervous system believes is safe to receive. And that belief lives not in your conscious mind, but in your energy signature. This is why the quantum leap isn't a linear process. It's not about climbing a staircase. It's about shifting timelines. You're not going from here to there. You're choosing a different version of now and becoming the self that matches it. And in doing so, you collapse all the versions of reality that no longer align. The old job, the toxic relationship, the constant struggle, they fall away. Not because you force them out, but because you stop feeding them your energy. Let me leave you with a paradox. Quantum physics suggests that particles don't even exist as things until you observe them. So what if your future isn't waiting to happen, but waiting to be observed from a new identity? What if the only thing delaying your breakthrough is the fact that you're still looking at your life through the eyes of who you used to be? You're about to discover something even more confronting in the next part, that your body, yes, your own brain and cells, are chemically addicted to your past identity and actively resisting your evolution. But there's a way out, and it begins not in thought but in the felt sense of your frequency. But we'll get there. First, remember this. You are not here to chase particles. You are here to collapse potential. And the most powerful potential is the version of you that knows I am not observing my reality. I am creating it. You wake up before you even open your eyes. A familiar wave washes over you. The same thoughts, the same tension in your chest, the same emotional residue of yesterday. You're not just waking up in your bed. You're waking up in your past again. And this isn't a metaphor, it's neurobiology. Your body is literally addicted to the chemical cocktail of the old you. And unless you break the cycle, your brain will recreate your past identity like a drug it can't live without. Let's go to the science. Neuroscience has shown that 95% of who you are by the age of 35 is a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, beliefs, and patterns that run unconsciously. You're not thinking your thoughts. Your thoughts are thinking you. Your nervous system isn't asking for change, it's begging for repetition. And here's the trap. The longer you live inside the same emotional state, whether it's anxiety, guilt, stress, or unworthiness, the more your body normalizes it. It becomes your baseline identity. Not because it's aligned with your soul, but because it's familiar. And the familiar to your survival brain equals safety. This is why every time you try to make a big change, a quantum leap, a shift in vibration, a new self-image, your body quietly rebels. It floods you with fear. It whispers self-doubt. It creates logical reasons to stay in place. Why? Because your subconscious programming isn't aligned with your conscious desire. The mind says, I want to evolve. The body says, but we've survived being this way. Don't you dare change. Let me give you a radical truth. Your body is your unconscious mind. Every emotion you haven't met, every trauma you haven't released, every belief you haven't questioned, it all lives in the tissues of your being. The mind might forget, but the body remembers everything, and it will do whatever it can to keep playing the emotional patterns it knows, even if those patterns are killing your future. Dr. Joe Dispenza calls this the chemical self. It's not just a poetic idea. It's measurable. Each emotional state you experience creates a unique blend of neuropeptides, hormones, and electrical signals. Feel anger for long enough and your cells begin to expect the chemistry of anger. Feel shame, fear, or victimhood repeatedly, and your biology reorganizes itself around those frequencies. This isn't just a bad habit, it's a biological addiction. And just like any addiction, withdrawal is painful. That's why transformation can feel like dying, because neurologically it is. When you try to embody a new version of yourself, confident, abundant, free, your body doesn't celebrate. It panics. It starts craving the chemical hits of the old identity. The discomfort you feel isn't failure. It's the detox of your former self. This is where most people quit. Not because they don't want change, but because they mistake withdrawal for misalignment. They say, this feels hard. Maybe it's not meant for me. But that's not the truth. The truth is the old you is fighting for survival inside your nervous system. And unless you learn to sit in the fire of that discomfort with presence, compassion, and coherence, you'll fall back into the same emotional gravity well again and again. So how do we interrupt the addiction to the old self? The first step is awareness. Not just mental, but somatic. You have to become intimately aware of the emotional signatures that define your current identity. Notice the triggers that pull you into the past. Observe the subtle contraction in your chest when you dream too big. Watch the stories that arise when you imagine ease, wealth, love, and catch how quickly your body resists them. Because here's the quantum secret. The field responds not to your imagination, but to your embodied vibration. You can visualize wealth all day long, but if your nervous system is calibrated to scarcity, the signal you're broadcasting is lack. And the quantum field, being impersonal and precise, will only ever match what you're being, not what you're wishing. That's why the path forward is not to push harder. It's to repattern your state. And this is where science and spirit begin to dance. Through techniques like heartbeat, brain coherence, breathwork, elevated emotional states, and repetition of new neural pathways, you can begin to teach your body what a new future feels like before it arrives. The key is to generate the feeling of the future now, not as a reaction, but as a decision. Because the moment you feel elevated emotions, gratitude, love, expansion, without needing the outer world to justify it, you begin to rewire your brain. You install a new signature in your field and the old chemistry starts to break down. But there's more. Neville Goddard taught that imagination is the creative power of the divine, not to wish for something but to become it in feeling. And when your inner state no longer matches your external conditions, that's when reality must bend. Not because you begged it to, but because it has no choice. Quantum law obeys coherence. So ask yourself this. What feelings are you addicted to? What emotions have defined your personality? What memories are you rehearsing in your mind that your body believes are still happening? Now, these aren't passive questions. They're portals. Because to step into the quantum leap, you must first see what's keeping you anchored. And what's anchoring you is rarely the outer world. It's the neuroemotional signature of the self you haven't let die. It's uncomfortable. Yes, it's inconvenient, but it's also sacred because once you become conscious of the patterns, you are no longer the pattern. You become the observer. And from there, the observer becomes the creator. In the next phase, we're going to cross the threshold. How to collapse the timeline of the old self before it collapses you. You'll learn how to vibrationally dissolve the past, not by erasing memories, but by shifting identity. And I'll guide you through the energetic ritual that allows your field to release the frequency of limitation. But be warned, once you do this, there's no going back. Somewhere deep inside you, a version of yourself is holding on, not out of hope, but out of habit. That version is attached to your past, not because it loves it, but because it knows it. And what the nervous system knows, it protects. But here's the paradox. Most people never see. What you don't collapse eventually collapses you. Let's look at this through the quantum lens. According to the principle of quantum superposition, all versions of you exist as simultaneous potentials until one is observed. The confident you, the abundant you, the healed you, the visionary you, they're all real but not yet collapsed into form. The version you're living now is simply the one you've unconsciously fed with focus, emotion, and repetition. And so long as you continue to identify with that self, its timeline remains active. Its energy loop stays alive. Its story becomes your prison. But here's what they never taught you. Identity isn't fixed. It's chosen. It's updated through energetic agreement. And the moment you withdraw your attention, your belief, and your emotional investment from the old version, the timeline begins to unravel like a frequency no longer being broadcast, like a program no longer receiving power, like a hologram losing coherence. Let's take it deeper. Everything in your life, your results, your relationships, your finances, your health, is encoded with the vibrational signature of who you've been. Not who you want to be, who you've been. The old job, it matched your past self-worth. The repeated heartbreak, it matched your emotional blueprint. The sense of stagnation, it matched the identity that feared expansion. Nothing in your outer world exists separate from your frequency. That's not philosophy. That's resonance. So how do you collapse a timeline? First, you stop trying to fix it, because fixing implies it's still you. You don't fix what you're not anymore. You release it. And to release it, you must perform the only ritual that the quantum field responds to with absolute clarity: energetic disidentification. Here's what that means. You must no longer feel like the old you, even if your circumstances haven't changed yet, even if your mind argues, even if your environment reflects the past. You withdraw your power by withdrawing your vibration, and that begins with presence. Start here, close your eyes, and feel the energy signature of the version of you who's been struggling. Not the thoughts, the frequency. Feel the posture, the breath pattern, the emotional baseline. What's the texture of that self? Heavy, tight, defensive, numb. Let it speak. Don't judge. Just witness, because witnessing begins the unraveling. Then imagine that version of you standing in front of you. Not to analyze, but to honor. Thank them. Truly, that version got you here, survived for you, navigated the unknown with the tools they had. They were never broken, just outdated. And now it's time to release them. Now say internally or aloud, "You are no longer the one creating my reality. I set you free." Feel what happens in your body when you say it. That tremble, that breath, that stillness. That's the energetic cord beginning to dissolve. That's the frequency shifting. This is not a one-time visualization. This is a practice of becoming. Every time the old you resurfaces in thought, in emotion, and reflex, you return to this choice. I no longer feed this frequency. I no longer embody this self. I collapse this identity with love. And slowly, like pulling roots from soil, the program begins to die. But there's a second layer, the body. You must bring your physiology into coherence with your new frequency. That means move like the new self, breathe like the new self, speak like the new self. This is where Neville Goddard's teaching becomes a quantum command. You must live from the state of the wish fulfilled, not towards it. You must occupy the end. And your biology must feel safe enough to believe it. So instead of reacting to your reality, transmit into it. Wake up and declare a new signal. I am now the version who trusts the unseen. I am now the frequency of abundance. I am now the embodiment of ease. Don't just say it, become it. Because the field doesn't hear your words, it reads your signal. The more often you return to the vibration of the future self, even for seconds, the more you starve the old timeline, and eventually it collapses. Not with fanfare, not with fireworks, often in silence, often with grief because it's a death and death always carries memory. But in that collapse there is freedom. Here's what you need to understand. The quantum leap doesn't happen when the universe gives you a sign. It happens when you stop giving your old self a signal. When you become a new harmonic and the universe bound by resonance has no choice but to meet you there. And now it's your turn to claim it. Type in the comments, I collapse the identity that no longer serves me. Say it like a declaration, like a key, like a vibration. Because the moment you say it, you're telling the field, I no longer negotiate with the past, I embody a new signal. Now you've made it this far. And the next phase is where it all begins to make sense. Because even after collapsing the old self, most people still wonder, why isn't it happening yet? Why does it still feel like something's missing? And the answer is simple. They're still wanting when they should be being. In the next chapter, we reveal the most ignored truth in manifestation and the only key that guarantees alignment. Get ready, because after this there is no turning back. There's something no one tells you when you begin this journey. A subtle trap that derails even the most dedicated seekers. The deeper you want the shift, the more your energy says, I don't have it. And this contradiction, this gap between desire and identity, is exactly why so many get stuck. Because the quantum field doesn't respond to longing. It responds to frequency. And frequency is never defined by what you say. It's defined by what you are. Let's go to the root. Most people think they're manifesting when they visualize their goals. Write affirmations, script out dream scenarios, and these practices can be powerful, but only if they're done from a place of inner alignment. Otherwise, they become rituals of resistance. You visualize the life you want but feel disconnected from it. You affirm abundance but your body vibrates scarcity. You script your dream reality but deep down you're waiting for something to prove it's real before you let yourself feel it. And this is the contradiction that collapses manifestation. When you wait for evidence before you shift your vibration, you delay the collapse of the desired timeline. Because in quantum mechanics, it is the vibration that calls the form into existence, not the other way around. Let's make it scientific. Every emotion has a measurable frequency. Gratitude, love, trust. These are elevated states that bring the heart and brain into coherence. And coherence creates a strong organized electromagnetic field. This field, measured by heart math and confirmed by countless studies, affects not only your biology, but the environment around you. You become a broadcasting station. You radiate the signal of your inner state and reality. Like a tuning fork vibrates to match your dominant frequency. So if you're living in a state of lack, constantly wanting, hoping, needing, and waiting, the field receives one message: I am not. And reality in its infinite precision says, as you wish. That's why the ones who manifest massive shifts, the ones who quantum leap timelines, are not the ones who beg the universe for change. They are the ones who embody the change before it arrives. They decide that their new identity is real, not because of external proof, but because of energetic truth. Neville Goddard taught, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not hope for it, not believe it's coming someday, but assume it. Wear it like a skin, like a frequency, like a truth deeper than logic. Because when you do, you're no longer sending out the signal of waiting. You're transmitting the signature of I am. Let's go even deeper. Most people live in a vibrational gap between the version they want to be and the version they keep feeding. And this gap is not bridged by effort. It's bridged by identity. You don't try to become a new version. You become it by stepping into the frequency it occupies and staying there long enough for the field to reorganize around you. But here's where the dark psychology of the mind shows up. It whispers doubts. It craves evidence. It wants guarantees. And every time you collapse back into how will it happen or where is it, you send a mixed signal. You say one thing, you vibrate another. And the field mirrors your incoherence. Let's interrupt this right now because this is the pattern that must end. From now on, you must become the cause, not the effect. You must emit the frequency of your future as a broadcast, not a request. You must live from the vibration of already having, already being, already embodying. Even when your bank account says otherwise. Even when your environment reflects the old. Especially then, because that is the moment of power. That is the test of coherence. And that is when the field begins to bend. Let's ground this into metaphor. Imagine your reality as a mirror. You don't smile at the mirror waiting for it to smile back first. That would be absurd. You smile first and the reflection responds. Reality is no different. Your outer world is not a dictator. It's a reflector, and it's always reflecting who you're being, not what you're asking. So when people say that I've been trying to manifest this for months and nothing's changing, what they're really saying is, I've been wanting something deeply, while still being someone who doesn't believe it's possible. And the field, always honest, always precise, reflects back the dominant signal, misalignment. The good news, you can shift your frequency in an instant, not by forcing but by remembering. Who would you be if it were already done? How would you feel, speak, breathe, walk? If the timeline of your highest self had already collapsed into now, that version exists, not as fantasy but as frequency. So here's your practice. At least once a day, drop into stillness. Close your eyes. Breathe into the heart and ask, what is the frequency of the version of me who already has what I desire? Then feel it. Don't try to make it perfect. Just feel the signal. Maybe it's calm. Maybe it's powerful. Maybe it's light. Whatever it is, amplify it. Let it flood your body and stay there. No expectation, no bargaining, just coherence. Do this enough and your nervous system will recalibrate. Your thoughts will follow. Your behaviors will shift and the field responding to your signal, not your stories, will begin to bend toward the version of reality that matches your truth. This is the essence of the quantum leap. Not jumping to something but collapsing into coherence with it. The leap is not movement, it's alignment. It's remembering that your external world is not the source of your experience. It's the shadow of your vibration. And now we arrive at the final veil. In the next and final chapter, we'll uncover the last and most powerful truth, that your desired future is not something you chase. It's a version of you that already exists right now in the quantum field, and your only task is to become a match for it. You've been taught to search, to strive, to become. You've walked through affirmations, meditations, visualizations, hoping that one day the version of you that you dream about would finally arrive. But here's the quantum truth, the one that unravels the illusion at its core. The version of you you're waiting for is already real, not as a metaphor, as a frequency, and you're not moving toward it. You are the portal through which it collapses into this timeline or never does. Let that settle in your system. Everything you've been wanting to attract is not out there in the distance, waiting for the right moment to appear. It's already encoded in the quantum field. It already is. The question is not how do I get there? The question is, who do I need to become so that this version of reality can find me? You don't manifest the version of you that has the life. You remember it. And the remembering isn't mental. It's energetic congruence. The moment your inner state matches the vibration of your desired self, you open a loop in the fabric of space-time. That loop is called entanglement. And from there, a bridge forms not made of effort, but of coherence. In quantum terms, entanglement means two particles or possibilities become so deeply connected that even across vast distances, the state of one instantly affects the state of the other. So imagine this, your future self is already entangled with you. The moment you emit the signature of that self in breath, in presence, in thought, in emotion, reality has no choice but to respond. It's not optional. It's physical law. But here's the barrier. You've been trained to identify with what you can see. You think you're a body moving through time. But time isn't linear in the quantum field. It's layered, holographic, and responsive, which means you are not becoming the next version of yourself. You are selecting it through vibrational congruence. The self that already feels free. The self that already breathes abundance. The self that already trusts the unknown. They all exist layered within the quantum now. So how do you collapse into that version? You stop waiting to feel different after something changes and you begin generating the feeling now, because you know you are the cause. You stop looking for evidence and become the evidence. You stop repeating the story and start radiating the frequency. You stop asking the field to save you and start showing the field who you really are. This is where most people falter. They collapse into memory instead of identity. They get triggered by their past or distracted by their environment and fall back into the chemistry of the old self. But that's not failure. That's an invitation. A portal is only useful if you walk through it. And to walk through, you must be willing to leave something behind. Not people, not places, but versions of yourself that are no longer in resonance. That's the true death that precedes the quantum leap. Not a death of the body, a death of the timeline that no longer holds your frequency. And every time you grieve that version with love and choose coherence instead of control, you shift dimensions, not in fantasy, But in vibration, you stop chasing. You start matching. So let me ask you, who do you choose to be when no one is watching? What do you vibrate? When no one is listening, that signal, that invisible powerful broadcast is shaping your timeline right now. It's calling in the people, the events, the synchronicities, the opportunities, and it's either drawing in your expansion or reinforcing your contraction. But today, in this very moment, you've stepped into awareness. And from awareness, there is no return. You now know you're not here to hope. You're here to harmonize, to embody, to become. Because the truth is, the new you isn't something you need to create. It's someone you uncover layer by layer, frequency by frequency, choice by choice. So if you felt something awaken inside you through this journey, if the old skin is peeling, the old story is cracking, and the vibration of your truth is getting louder, then you are ready. Ready to take this beyond inspiration. Ready to train your frequency. Ready to enter the dimension where you no longer try to manifest. You simply are the manifestation. Because this community is not for spectators. It's for those who remember that they are the signal, and that reality bends for the one who vibrates before the evidence. So I'll leave you with this. The field is always listening. The only question is what version of you is speaking.